Most of us have found ourselves running through one of these busy hubs at one time or another. Whether you're rushing to catch a connecting flight or just to get home after a long, joyless journey, all of us have experienced this packed place where simply passing through is what most people do. Grab your suitcase and get ready to soar off to an exciting English enclave. We'll learn all about airports on this week's episode of FYI. Welcome to For Your Info.
En inglés.
You got it. Hello, and welcome to another exciting edition of FYI For Your Inglés, the topic-based show where you can learn about anything and everything. And it's all in your hands. All you have to do is drop me a line. You can reach out on social media and let me know what you'd like to hear about. There are so many interesting topics out there, and I want to make sure we cover the best ones. So send me your suggestions. All right, well, today we're going to talk about airports. I think most of us have been to an airport. Even if we haven't traveled on a plane, we've gone to pick up a family member, a loved one, or a friend. But I think it's a place that nowadays most people are familiar with. And in many cases, it's even essential. As you know, in my case, my family lives 6,000 kilometers away, and there's only one way to get there, by plane. Okay, you can take a boat, but I don't have that much vacation time. Anyway, let's kick off with our intro, as we always do. I said most of us have found ourselves running through one of these busy hubs. And a hub is a place where a lot of different things connect. I think of Moncloa in Madrid. It's a hub. You can get buses, you can get trains, and a lot of times if we talk about hubs as an airport, they use Dubai as an example. It is a hub. And many people who are in IT, in Informatica, you'll probably know it too as the place where you can plug in a lot of different things. Then I said, whether you're rushing to catch a connecting flight or just to get home after a long, joyless journey. And to be rushing to catch a flight is vas con prisas. You're rushing. You're in a rush to catch a connecting flight if you have a stopover or a layover. I have to say, personally, I try to avoid any flights that aren't direct flights. And now we have airplanes that can fly 19 hours. I believe the record right now is possibly, don't quote me because this is always changing, but around 19 hours from Newark Liberty Airport in New Jersey, right next to New York City, all the way to Singapore. When a flight's 19 hours, I think you would welcome a stopover. Now, again, it's going to take you longer to get to your destination, but 19 hours on a seat, which, as we know, they've gotten less and less comfortable, at least in coach or economy class. I've only flown first class once, and it was because they upgraded me for free. I can't afford to fly first class. And then I finished up that sentence saying, after a long, joyless journey, and joyless is sin mucha felicidad. Because let's be honest, we try and make traveling fun, but in the end, it's tiring. If you're going through different time zones, then you get jet lag. It's never easy. The customs and security checkpoints, it can be very stressful. And I guess this is why people suffer from air rage. Esto es esta rabia que suele tener la gente en un avión. And the word journey, be careful with that one, because una jornada laboral, as you say, is a work day. A journey is like an adventure. It's a very poetic way of saying a trip. Then I said all of us have experienced this packed place where simply passing through is what most people do. And to experience in Spanish, you say experimentar. And if some place is packed, it's the same as saying crowded. And when I said most people are simply passing through, I mean all the passengers. There are many people who work at the airport, and we're going to take a look at a lot of the different people that make it possible, because we think about pilots and we think about air traffic controllers, but there are so many people working behind the scenes, and we're going to see what happens at airports. And then I said, grab your suitcase and get ready to soar off. So grab, escoger, agarrar. Grab, we use this word a lot in English. Grab your suitcase, your luggage, your baggage. I think those are more general words. Suitcase is more specific, and maletín is briefcase. And carry-on, no se puede ser más lógico que eso. You can't be more logical than that. You call it carry-on luggage because you carry it on the plane, as opposed to checking your luggage. But we'll take a look at the whole process a little bit later on. I said, get ready to soar off to an exciting English enclave. And to soar off, well, to soar means to fly very high. And the word enclave, you don't say it the same. You spell it the same as we do. But I think it's a French word, if I'm not mistaken. So are you ready to learn about airports? You guys know me. I'm an av geek. I love airports, even though, as I said, they're not really places that you're supposed to love. They're expensive. Usually you're waiting there. You're in line, esperando en cola. You're rushing around. As we said, it can be very, very stressful. But also airports have become destinations in and of themselves, which we'll look at that a little bit later on as well. So why do airport codes, and you've seen this many times, why do they have the letter X at the end? I guess the most famous one is LAX. Los Angeles Airport is called LAX. Well, quite simply, when three-letter airport codes became the standard, all the ones that were using two had to add an extra letter, and X just seemed like the logical choice to them. And it's very important in the aviation industry that everything be streamlined, all the processes. Communication is key, as you can imagine. Here, I'll start with a little trivia question for you. What is the accident where the most amount of people have perished? To perish is to die. The aviation accident where the most amount of people have perished. It's in Tenerife. The Tenerife air disaster. 2 747s full of fuel crashed on the runway. And it was just a chain of events, but the number one reason was the lack of clear communication. So you'll see that things in the aviation industry and at airports are pretty standardized. If you want to learn more fun facts, you can join us in the bonus episode. Remember, every week we have a bonus episode that's exclusively for patrons. And if you want to find out more about becoming a patron, you can go over to patreon.com/Alberto Alonso and join our curious community. We've got a wonderful group of people who are curious, funny, kind, and charming. And a shout out to all my patrons, especially my super duper students. Javier, Paco, Roberto, Jose Maria, Mila, and Alex. And don't forget about my interstellar students, the ones who get a monthly private class with me, Carmen, Lina, Isa, Paco, David, and Edgar. If you guys want more information on how you can become a patron and join my curious community, go to patreon.com/Alberto Alonso. And you can get bonus episodes every week. You can get vocabulary sheets with all the vocabulary and worksheets where you can put yourself to the test afterwards. If you're in our higher levels, our super duper level, you get a weekly class with me. This is a group class where we review the key vocabulary of each episode. And as I said earlier, if you're in the interstellar level, you get all of that and a private class with me. For only 60 euros a month, you get 5 classes with me. 4, because you got your weekly review classes, and the 5th class is your private class, where we can work on whatever you want, and we'll also work on what I determine to be, with you, your weak points, tus puntos débiles. We all have them, don't worry. It's about finding them and attacking them. So great job to all my patrons. I've seen you all making tremendous progress. Keep up the good work. And if you guys are interested in joining, go to patreon.com/Alberto Alonso and find out more. So let's rewind and see where it all started. The title of the world's oldest airport is disputed. There's an airport near Paris called Toussus-les-Nobles. I'm pretty sure I didn't pronounce that correctly. And this airport was established in 1907, and it has been operating ever since. Also, College Park Airport, which is in Maryland in the United States, was established in 1909 by Wilbur Wright. But back then, airports weren't what you see today with these amazing shopping centers, eateries, waterfalls, gyms. No. They were just airstrips. In fact, that's a word we should look at. An airstrip is anywhere you can land a plane. So it's like when you have a makeshift runway. I think the word is chapucero in Spanish. But let's be honest, they were just places to take off and land. And remember, at that time, there were no jets. The planes were a lot smaller and mostly were used to deliver mail. And as they got bigger, they said, well, wait, maybe we can fly some people as well as mail. And these days, you'll see a lot of planes that you're on, commercial flights. Well, they have maybe cargo that they're taking to another country or something, but you don't know about it because it's in what we call the hold of the plane. And the word propeller is an interesting word because you say hélice. We call it a propeller because it's something that propels you forward, te impulsa. And as planes got bigger and bigger, well, they were able to go farther and farther. And then you had, instead of just domestic flights, you say nacionales, we say domestic flights, you started to have international flights. And no, I'm not talking about from New Jersey to Singapore. I'm talking about crossing the English Channel. And if you were going to do a flight to Singapore, you would have to take 7 stops along the way. And it was really expensive. As we know, it wasn't available to everyone. Until the jet age. As we say, enter the jet age. And a guy named Sir Geoffrey de Havilland came up with the idea for the comet, the DH-106 comet, in 1943. They began to work on it in September of 1946, which is 3 years later, and the prototype first flew on July 27th, 1949. So it took about 6 years from concept to having that final prototype. And the comet, as it's called, nobody calls it the DH-106. You can call it the comet or the de Havilland comet. It became the first jetliner, the first commercial jetliner. It's a really beautiful plane, but it was a flying coffin. What? ¿Un ataúd en el aire? Yes, it was a flying coffin. They started to realize that the same accidents were happening over and over again. There was a problem with the pressurization. And up until that point, all the non-jet aircraft had square windows because they were easy to make. So the Comet took from those designs. They said, well, square windows is the way to go. That's how we've always done it. And that's what you normally do. You copy your predecessors. But after a series of crashes that had to do with metal fatigue from the pressurized aircraft, they knew something had gone wrong, and they had to look into it. And they realized it was the square windows that was causing the metal fatigue. And ever since that day, windows of planes are oval-shaped. This is because it distributes the pressure evenly. But they had to learn that the hard way. And that's something I told you guys in the aviation episode. Every time there's an accident, every time something goes wrong, it makes flying safer. The Tenerife air disaster made communications clearer. These crashes set the standard for how jet windows would be to this day. So many lessons have been learned throughout the years. And then I think one of the biggest breakthroughs was not low cost, but it's kind of related to low cost because they were able to lower prices and lower costs. And how do you think they were able to do that? Enter the 747, the jumbo jet. And this all of a sudden opened up traveling for the whole world. You could fit 500 people on a plane. This made it accessible to the whole world. But of course, airports all this time have had to change their infrastructure. One of the most famous terminals in JFK, it's the TWA terminal. Now it's a hotel. It's absolutely beautiful. It's got a rooftop pool. It's got views of the runways from your hotel room. And my wife, she even loves it because she feels like it's really nostalgic. But the story behind that building is very interesting. They made a gorgeous building, and this terminal was made to the specifications of the jets of that day. Well, what happened? The 747 came, and it made the terminal obsolete in just a few months. However, since the terminal is so beautiful and there was so much attention to detail, they preserved it, and it recently opened up as a hotel. And there are many, many airports that can't host big jets because their runways are too short or they just don't have. Think about this. If you get on a 747, do you know how high off the ground that is? So you can't just grab some stairs from anywhere. So as aviation changed, the actual planes, the infrastructure had to change as well. And as I said, always with lessons being learned along the way, and sometimes the hard way. Let's take a look at some of the areas in the airport. You've got the terminals, which are the buildings. You've got your arrivals and your departure hall. I think you've seen all those. Anytime you've been to an airport, you've seen salidas, llegadas, arrivals, departures. I always tell people I learned the word sortie in French, exit, at Charles de Gaulle Airport. So sometimes you can learn the names of things just walking around the airport because they come in different languages and the signage is very clear in general. Then you've got your check-in counters, and this is if you're going to check a bag. I try not to check bags, but when we go to the United States, we have to. But when I went around Asia for 3 weeks, I did it with a backpack. Well, this way your bag never leaves your sight and you're in and out of there. As we say, pack light or travel light. So you've got your check-in counters where you've got to wait online, by the way. Then you've got your currency exchange, which let me give you a little insider tip. This is usually one of the worst exchange rates you can get at the airport. Well, just think of the food too. Same idea. They've got you there, they know you're hungry, or they know you need money, so you pay a premium. Let's put it that way. I wouldn't exchange money at airports if you don't have to. So you've checked your bags, you've decided that you're not going to exchange your money, you're going to use your credit card, but guess what? You've got to go through the security checkpoint. Oh man, I don't know about you guys, but this is probably the worst part of the airport experience. You have to take off your belt. Sometimes you have to take off your shoes. They scan you. They search you, they poke you. It's an uncomfortable part of the trip, I must say. And again, you're waiting online generally. Then once you go through the security checkpoint, you got to check the board, the departures board. You have the arrivals board and the departure board. And you got to see if your plane is on time or delayed. These are very important words to know. And then, as they would say in the announcements, please proceed to your gate. But of course, to get to your gate, you've got to go through a maze of shops and all kinds of duty-free places in order to get to your gate. But now airports are tons of fun. I've got to be honest, when I was a kid, I don't remember it being very fun. I remember cement walls. I remember you couldn't see anything. And now airports, as I said, they're becoming destinations in and of themselves because they have these big glass buildings. So you've seen a trend where airports that used to be dark walls are all glass now with high ceilings. I'm thinking of Madrid's Terminal 4 and Terminal 4S. And I remember being bored out of my gourd, as we say. Our gourd is la cabeza. And now when we go to the airport, you've got shops, you've even got playgrounds. In Terminal 4, my daughter loves to play on those playgrounds. And so much that I said, okay, honey, we've got to go or we're going to miss our flight. Remember, we don't lose a flight, we miss it. And I said, we're going to miss our flight. And she goes, oh, I want to play. I'm like, no, okay. I'm glad you're distracted. I'm glad you're having fun. But the reason we came here is to get on the plane. So I thought it was great that I had to tell her, okay, we're ready now. She didn't get impatient. She was distracted. And anybody who's ever traveled with kids, you know how important that is. And I got to say, I can't blame kids. If they get a little bit cranky or they get tired. Of course, parents have to discipline them and let them know. But I've seen adults get crankier than children. I've seen adults throw full-blown temper tantrums on planes. And the last time we went to the United States, do you know the person in my family who complained the least? Lara. That's right. Also, we were doing everything we could to keep her distracted. But you don't want to get so distracted that you miss your flight. Then you've got to board. And it depends on if you have pre-boarding or if you're a business club member, any of these things, well, then you can board. For example, with Iberia, I can pre-board. Also, if you're traveling with kids, they let you pre-board as well. And then you've got a couple different ways that you can reach the plane, obviously. You can, if you're lucky, you have a jet bridge. And a jet bridge is these fingers, they call them too, que parecen dedos. Then they have air stairs, and the air stairs are the ones where you have to actually go on the tarmac or on the apron, where you're actually walking next to the planes, and you board from there. It's a very logical word, air stairs. And another fun fact, the 737, the Boeing 737, is one of the most successful commercial airplanes ever. And it flies to so many destinations. And do you want to know why? One of the reasons is because it's low to the ground. So they don't need these huge air stairs when it's time to disembark. Yes, you heard correctly. Disembark. Ahí os hemos copiado. If you've flown with Ryanair, you've definitely flown on a 737. It's the only plane they operate. And if you notice next time, those Ryanair planes are very low to the ground. It's so that they can land at almost any airport. And obviously, so the people can get off. So now you've boarded the plane and they make you wait another 45 minutes, right? Isn't that fun? I love the safety lecture. That's always fun, where they teach you how to work a seatbelt. But seriously, you should pay attention to these people, to the crew members, because they're trying to help you, really. They're saying locate your exits. And I don't know if you do that. I always do that. I always locate my nearest exits because every plane is different. And finally, after 45 minutes and sitting there sweating, all of a sudden, it's pushback, which kind of makes sense. And did you know this? The plane doesn't go in reverse. Yeah, it's not like a car or a truck. Listen to what I said, push back. The plane is actually pushed back. So there's a little trivia question. Planes can't go in reverse. Then you taxi over to the runway. And it's interesting because the ramp or the apron, that's where the planes are parked. The taxiway is all the area, let's call it the roads around the runway. So all the time you're moving, when you're not parked at the gate and when you're not on the runway, you are taxiing. And you're on the taxiway. And it's actually really funny because I remember when my wife, I landed and I think I was coming back from Almeria. And I said, I'm taxiing now. And she's like, what do you mean taxiing? She said, my brother's going to pick you up. I'm like, oh, okay. Let me explain. To taxi es los movimientos de los aviones. And then you get over to the runway and there's no turning back. And an interesting thing about runways, the numbers that you see on the runway indicate the direction on a compass. So if it's runway 18L, the L is for left, The R obviously is for right, and 18 means it's 180 degrees. If it's runway 36, then it's 360 degrees on the compass. You catch my drift. You just add a 0 on the end, and that's the directions, that's the degrees on a compass. Again, everything needs to make sense. Everything has to be standardized. Another thing that we didn't mention was the hangars. And this is an interesting word because it's a homophone. A hangar es hangar, but also hangar con ER es una percha. Why? Because you hang things on them. That's where they park the planes and they do maintenance on them when they need them. And then speaking of parking, you've got your parking garage. You've got short-term and long-term parking. Many airports have a connecting train station and bus lines as well. If you're going overseas or abroad, as we say, well, then you're going to have to go through customs when you land as well. And customs is aduana. You might want to claim that VAT, value added tax. I think it's IVA in Spanish. And a place I hope you'll never have to go is the lost and found. And the lost and found in Spanish is objetos perdidos. And have you ever wondered what happens to the luggage after it gets lost and nobody claims it? Well, I'm going to tell you. If nobody claims the luggage after 90 days, it is sold to an unclaimed baggage center where all the items inside it are resold. So I guess it's a multi-million-dollar industry. But don't forget, if they lose your bag, they have to pay you some money. So I don't think they do it on purpose. But there is a place where lost luggage goes. And my wife has been in that room, the one at JFK at least. It's a huge warehouse. And in the end, they lost her luggage. They never found it. There's a huge team of people working 24 hours a day to make sure those airports are not just running smoothly, but that they're clean and in great working condition. So we know about the pilot. You've got the pilot, you've got the co-pilot. Us nerds, we call them the captain and the first officer, but normal people say pilot and co-pilot. Then you've got the crew, which are the flight attendants. And I always tell people, you hope they never have to do the job that they've been trained to do, which is save your life. Yeah, they'll give you your drink, but if they have to, they'll also give you mouth to mouth. They are trained professionals. And as I said, you hope they never have to use that training. You've got your baggage handlers. They always get a bad rap, as always, but they're an important part. And then your bird handlers. What? Bird handlers? Well, yeah, birds have always been attracted to airports. Since it's a big open space, they feel like it's a sanctuary. But birds and plane engines don't mix. I'll remind you, the plane that came down in the Hudson River, that was a bird strike, as it's called. 2 Canadian geese went into the engines. And the planes can fly with one engine, but if both of them aren't working, you are in bad. You're in a pickle, as we say, en un apuro. So yeah, there are people there that handle birds. They're into what's called falconry, and they have eagles, hawks, and falcons that chase away the other birds. They compared it to a shark in the water. When there's a shark, all the other fish swim away, and fast. Well, the same thing happens. So they use them to scare away the birds. Not every airport has them, but I know JFK definitely does. Let's take a look at some stats over here. The U.S. has by far the most airports in the world. And these numbers are from 2013. In 2013, there were 13,513 airports in the United States. In Brazil, that's second place, 4,093. So we're talking about 3 times the amount of airports. Just to give you an idea, in Texas alone, there are 1,981 airports. Again, this is from 2013, but just to give you an idea. Some notable airports, you've got Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta Airport, which has won the awards for biggest and also for busiest for many, many years. It has 5 runways, and it's located strategically where it's a 2-hour flight away from 80% of the country's business population. We were talking about the word hub before. That's a hub. We can't rule out China. Beijing Capital International Airport has recently become one of the busiest airports in the world. Another airport that everybody knows about, the hub, Dubai. It's the world's busiest airport with only 2 runways. And in the bonus part, we're going to take a look at more fun facts, and we're going to take a look at Changi Airport and other airports that have amazing amenities. Right now, I've got a jet. No es que tengo un jet. I've got a jet es tengo que pirarme. But I sure hope you'll join us in the bonus episode of today's FYI.